Well, Sunday's snow is great for winter sports, of course, like skiing and snowboarding.
And meteorologist Karin has been snowboarding, but not the way you might think.
Right.
Hello again.
Hi there. Well, this is a snowboard, and this is what I use. So not your typical kind of snowboard. This one actually involves taking snowfall measurements, and we're taking a slightly different twist on your typical snow measurements. Besides using this snowboard, we've got a measuring wheel, a yardstick, a scale, a sample, a cutter, and also some hot chocolate is required.
And just roll this right along.
What happens after the snow falls? Well, there is usually some shoveling to be done. The kind of snow we receive will determine just how big that shoveling job will be.
All the way to the end of my driveway, it is 55. But we all know that the snowplow eventually comes by, and then we have to shovel out about halfway into the street. Here we go out. Looks like about to 70 feet right here. So now that we've measured the length, we have to do the width too. When we multiply that out, 1,190 square feet that I have to shovel. Ugh.
Next, we need to put our snowboard out in an open area away from buildings and trees that could affect our snowfall sample. It's also important to mark the board's location so we can find it later. Now we wait and enjoy that hot chocolate.
So we marked our snowboard with this little orange stick, and what we're gonna do first is just take a snow depth measurement right on top of that snowboard. Did you hear it hit? Looks pretty close to 4.3 on average. I've got this snow cutter, we'll call it. It's a 6-inch square box.
Now that the snow has fallen, we want to take our sample and weigh it to see just what kind of snowfall we're dealing with. Our sampler cutter weighs 1 pound, 2 ounces. So we'll subtract that from the weight of the cutter and the snow.
I've got a kitchen scale here, and I'm just gonna weigh my cutter box with the snow inside, and we're gonna find out the total weight of that 6-inch square amount of snow. 1 pound, 9.5 ounces.
The snow weighs 7.5 ounces. Our sampler is 6 inches square, so we'll multiply 7.5 ounces by 4 to get our square foot number. That gives us 30 ounces of snow per square foot. And that number times 1,190 square feet for my driveway means I'll need to move 35,700 ounces of snow, which is the same as 2,231 pounds of snow. The snow weight, of course, can vary greatly from snowstorm to snowstorm. It can range from fluffy snow, which can have a snow-to-liquid ratio of 20:1 or more, to the heavy backbreakers, which can have a ratio of 8:1 or less. It all depends on temperatures, both aloft and at the ground, as well as the moisture content. My friend here just moved 1,800 pounds of snow. And that's why that hot chocolate is important. Extra energy.
So we'll be taking these measurements of snow weight throughout the winter and passing them along, and then you can brag about the great workout you had that day. But of course you do need to be careful, as this can be strenuous work. And while this is our version of taking a weight measurement of the snowfall, the National Weather Service takes their snow measurements in inches, and we're going to be visiting them next time to see how they record the official snow totals.
Did you get all that math?
I know, my brains were starting to drip out of my
That's
ears.
why Karin had to work today. Gary couldn't figure it all out.
Right.
I had smoke coming out of my calculator.
And it, we'll get those wet snowfalls, and those make a big difference.
Those can be backbreaking, so yeah, a lot of weight with those.
Yeah, this one wasn't too bad.
Very interesting, really
fun.
interesting. I like the snowboard idea, so you can even do that with your kids.
Absolutely.
To measure. That's a good idea.
Good
All right,
little
thanks,
experiment.
Karin.
Thanks, Karin.
We have certainly suffered through our share of miserable and dangerously cold temperatures so far this winter.
You think it couldn't get much worse? You'd be wrong.
And today is the day to talk about it. Meteorologist Karin is here to tell us why we are marking this day.
Well, it was actually on this date, January 30th, 1951, 63 years ago, when Madison and southern Wisconsin set their lowest temperature records. Now, the mercury that morning in Madison dipped to -37 degrees, and no, that's not the wind chill. That was the actual air temperature. And that record, as well as other records throughout the state, have been observed and recorded meticulously by many people over the years. One of them is even famous.
If you travel to the National Weather Service in Sullivan, Wisconsin, you'll see computer screens filled with isobars, radar and satellite views, and projections galore. Outside of the office, snow is measured the good old-fashioned way, and even with a new high-tech device.
These are the ultrasonic snow depth sensors.
Ultrasonic snow depth sensors.
Yeah.
All of these measurements are studied and logged as one would expect. Of course, it wasn't always done like this.
I guess in certain ways, I can use the term Dr. Data.
Meet Ed Hopkins. He's Wisconsin's assistant state climatologist and the keeper of the records. Ed has the original books where weather data was entered for Madison.
May 1883. And this was taken up at the university. I believe this is at Washburn Observatory.
That's way before the National Weather Service was established. And he's an expert on the history of record keeping in Madison.
Around 1860, there was, in fact, one of the people that took weather observations was a John Muir.
Some of the most fascinating entries in these record books are the personal observations.
March 22nd, 1916. There was 9 inches of snow on the ground. There was a total of 11 inches midnight to midnight. And there's notes, and they say, yeah, thunder at 2 a.m.
Streetcar lines out of business in the morning on account of heavy snow.
And some of these old record books even include saved newspaper accounts with significant information.
I had a chuckle on this. It says, 1916 weather report shows vagaries of nature. Extreme heat and unusual cold marks the year. Holidays are pleasant. You know, things are quite similar today in certain respects.
We'll be down to 21 below zero by tomorrow morning with wind chills to -45.
Now, while we've all been enduring some rather difficult temperatures recently, we're still quite a distance from those all-time record lows.
The 37 degrees below zero was set in 30th of January, 1951.
On that same morning, the people of Lone Rock woke up to even lower temperatures.
Fuel oil froze and the LP gas gelled, and even how one family lost their pet goldfish. They woke up in the morning to find it frozen in a bowl of ice.
Oh my God.
Sue Sadler has all the newspaper clippings from that historic day. It was her dad, Ben Silko, who worked at the Lone Rock Airport and made the official measurement.
He went out to get the recording that morning, and the mercury had dropped into the bulb of the thermometer. And the thermometer went down accurately to 45 degrees. So we got calipers and measured the between things so that you could figure that line, you know, the amount of the lines, and measured it into where he thought it would have started, at least have stopped anyway, which would have been 53 below. He thought it probably could have gotten colder, but...
So what did he tell you about that day, like when he was telling you stories about that day?
Well, just that on one of the buildings, I don't know if it was at the airport or not, but the metal was so cold that the paint just literally slid off it, so it looked like a shiny new nickel or whatever. It was
just on the outside of the building?
The outside of the building, it just fell off in sheets.
Did the kids go to school that day?
No, they had the day off, but it wasn't because of the weather. The furnace had quit. They were furnace problems, otherwise they would have been in school. Isn't that interesting?
That is cold.
That is cold.
That is really cold, yeah. And since we're talking about newspaper headlines, I've got the Wisconsin State Journal from January 10th after our first cold snap. And the headline there says, "We're more struck by cold snaps than we should be." And the beginning of the article goes on to say, "We've become weather wimps." So what do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
I certainly have.
That is, it must be fascinating to go through those old records. You could spend all day reading some of those observations.
Yeah, and to listen to this woman whose father had taken that official measurement and to hear some of his stories, that was just so fun.
53 below.
Amazing.
I hope we don't hit it again.
No, I hope you're right.
This is nothing. Great story. Thanks, Karin.
We're going to send that story to Atlanta. Let the people in Atlanta listen to that. Good job, Karin. That was a great story.